Hey everyone, Daniel here from Team Kuribrohs, and today I am joined by Jamie Bradshaw, who finished with 4 wins, 1 loss at the Irish Remote Duel locals on the 30th of January. So, Jamie, first off, congratulations. And what deck did you decide to play for this event?
So I decided to go with Magistus Shaddoll.
Okay. And what made you decide on this deck for the event?
Honestly, it's really simple. During COVID, I sold off my collection apart from the Shaddoll core. So
Right.
getting back into the game, I just bought Magistus and just trap cards. It was just nice and cheap.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so quickly, do you want to run us through the list? And then we can kind of discuss matchups and how you felt about the deck overall.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. Lineup, it's a 41 card deck. I know some people are kind of like, 41, cut it down to 40. But 41 ran okay. There was one card that I wanted to add, and I'll get to it when in the profile.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to cut anything else, so I just threw it in just to see how it went. It turned out to be okay. But we started off with the Shaddoll package. So one dragon, one beast, two hedgehog, no Falco. Falco was in the original build, but I cut the Falco for the second hedgehog. After some testing in the first remote deal, and I preferred the two hedgehog as opposed to one hedgehog, one Falco.
Yeah, I mean, Wendy
Um,
is kind of just better Falco at this stage, right?
exactly, and it's just more so, there's hands where you'd have, I'll come back to this now in a second, but there's hands where you have the hedgehog, and if it was a Falco, the play is just literally Winda on your turn, and that's pretty much it. Whereas you can Winda on your turn, and you can still like set a card as well because
Yeah.
of the hedgehog. So it's a little bit better. And realistically speaking, the grind game with this deck is fine as it is, so you don't really need the Falco anymore.
Yeah.
Then to Ariel. So Ariel is a really good card with today's format, from what I can see anyway. I haven't really played since 2019, like physical cards, and I'm not really one for simulators, so it's been a while since I've like properly played.
Mm-hmm. But you're liking
So
her for the banish effect, is it?
I'm liking her for the banish effect. Before everything kicked off with the way the world is, I was playing Shaddoll Invoked, and I ran her at 1. So at 1 in Shaddoll Invoked, she's like fine, but the combo was dead if you drew her. So playing 2 kind of enables you to have the Rest Shaddoll Incarnation combo.
Yeah.
Even if you draw 1, and then the chances of you drawing 2 in your opening hand is like minimal. But in this deck, it's like it's completely fine because you don't really want to be doing the Rest Shaddoll Incarnation combo.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving on, it's 3 Squamata and 3 Windy to round off the Shaddoll package. Squamata is just, you max out on these because these are the cards you want to see in your opening hand.
Yeah.
The reason you play 3, the reason that I'm playing 3 Wendy is because what I want is I want to be able to maximize seeing the Shaddolls in my hand, and a fusion card.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't matter if I have, and if I open these 2, it's completely fine. If I open these 2, it's completely fine. Realistically speaking, it's fine no matter what combination you draw. Because there's a card in the extra deck that we'll get into that makes even drawing 2 dark Shaddolls completely fine.
Right.
Shaddoll Schemata, sending a card to graveyard, whatever Shaddoll card you want is pretty good. And then Wendy being able to set something as well is like really good. So that's the Shaddoll package.
Yeah.
Shaddoll package wise, as I said, I tested Falco before, but I don't think it's needed. This was the 41st card that I wanted to try out today, and that was Eldlich, the Golden Lord. So the first remote duel that I played in, I had a really janky version of this deck, and going second, I would have to send Raliona as my light target. So I wanted just another light target, another good light target, to send off Shaddoll Fusion if I'm going second, and this just like is really good to dump off Shaddoll Fusion.
Possibly the best light monster in the game at the moment.
Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. And the reason I played Eldlich over which Performapal is it? Or Performade, should I say?
Trick Clown.
Trick Clown, yeah, that's the one. I always get Damage Juggler and Trick Clown mixed up. The reason I played Eldlich over the Trick Clown is because it has more utility, because you can send it from your hand with a spell or a trap to send something on the field. So just for instance, like if you come up against someone with, God forbid, an anti-spell fragrance, you can just use this and send it to graveyard, and then you can bring it back as well. So it's a really good card. It's versatile, and that's the reason I like it in here. This is probably the reason this deck is good at the moment. A lot of people are on trap Shaddolls. I really like the Magistus stuff. It's a little bit expensive now for some people, so I can understand if people couldn't play this or they didn't want to play it. It's completely fine. It changed the deck a little bit, but not enough for you to see like a huge difference in the playstyle. This is really good because, as I said, I was playing Shaddoll Invoked before everything kind of came to a halt. So this is just a light version of Alistair for the deck, and it frees up a lot of the extra deck to play some good cards. It frees up your main deck to be able to play some good cards as well. The Invoke stuff is still good. It's just I prefer this because it just gives me more utility to be able to play stuff that I want to play. And she's good as well because the second effect, sometimes it didn't come up today, but it can come up. Because you're banishing stuff in this deck now, she's pretty good because you can, on normal or special, obviously you can activate her effect and add a Magistus spell or trap, usually the fusion, to your hand. So she's like another way to get to a fusion card. But the other effect, which people kind of don't really know about, which is pretty decent in itself, is you can return a banished level 4 or lower spellcaster monster from your banished zone to your graveyard. So it kind of refuels the graveyard with Shaddoll names if you need it. And that's the light targets that I have. I only play 4 light targets. And then to round off the monsters, just 3 main deck hand traps and just Ash because it's just generic.
Do you think Ash is the best generic hand trap at the moment, or would you have played anything else?
At the moment, from what little I've played, obviously there's people that play a lot more than what I have, and they could argue that it might be the best hand trap at the moment. I would say it's pretty decent because it's just, you want to go first with this deck, and hand traps, you want to be putting them in if you want to be going second. So hand traps for me were kind of conflicting with what I wanted to do with this deck. But it's just the utility of having Ash Blossom to just negate a key search for something. That's the only reason that it's in here. It's just, as I said, it's probably just the most versatile hand trap that there is at the moment. There's other good hand traps, but with everything, the main decks activate and resolve in the hand. So, Imperm is not great at the moment. Veiler's not great at the moment. Bell is good, but I just didn't play that today. Gamma can be okay if you know what to hit and you know when to play Gamma. And Gamma is actually insane for Shaddolls going second. But spoiler, I didn't actually play the Gamma package in my side deck today because I wanted to try out a few interesting cards. I cut, originally the Gamma package was in it, but I cut the Gamma package to test out 4 different cards today, which we'll get to. So going into the spell cards, we play 1 Shaddoll Fusion, 2 Magistus Invocation, 3 Super Poly, and then 3 of the best fusion spell in the game.
Are you happy with those ratios?
Yeah, ratios are fine with this, I think. The only thing that people might kind of be interested about is the 1 Shaddoll Fusion. So really, I kind of I didn't want to open up Shaddoll Fusion, is the logic here. But I wanted access to it whenever I needed it. So 1 was fine because
You have
to go, kind of like run.
or construct to send it.
Yeah, there's just so many ways to get it, and you're going to be fusing someone with Shaddoll Schism more so now on your opponent's turn, and we'll get to that. But this is still a good card, because if you open this, it's completely fine, because that way you can probably 90% of the time have double window, but I find one window is completely fine. So I cut this down just to get space for other cards, and like. The only time I really want to get El Shaddoll Fusion is for when I want to use it in the battle phase, when I have like a construct or a Boral Sword, just to kind of like when I know I'm pushing for game, that's when I want that card. The Two Magistus Invocation, sometimes I play one, so like this is a card that I can cut to one to side out.
Yeah,
it's a good card. It's nicer than Invocation, I think, the Alistair Invocation. Because this you can use your field and your hand, whereas normal Invocation you have to special summon from your hand if it's not an invoke monster. So it's just more versatile, and that's the key thing with this deck. It's just really versatile. Super Poly, again, like versatile going first or second, because you can either going second, it'll break a board, or going first, you can just set it, and you can interrupt your opponent at a key time, which happened a couple of times today, and it's a pretty good card, especially when all your monsters are one Shaddoll plus a different attribute.
Yeah, it's effectively a hand trap, right?
Yeah, it's effectively a hand trap. It's effectively it's three traps, basically. 3 additional traps, which we play a good bit of in this deck. And then 3 Shaddoll Fusion. It's a bonkers spell card. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Going first, it's completely fine, but you really get the benefit when you're going second with it, providing they don't Ash it, which it's good Ash bait as well.
Yeah.
And then moving into the final part of the main deck, traps were quite trap heavy. So 1 Resh Shaddoll Incarnation, 1 Shaddoll Schism. You could play 2 of this. I find 1 is okay. And it's an expensive enough card now, so if you kind of are on a budget, like a low budget, you need 1 of these to play the deck. I will argue that, but you don't need 2 to play the deck.
Right.
Moving on, I'll come back to why these are good. We play 2 Dynamiscus, and then 3 Sinister Shadow Game, 3 Torrential Tribute, and then 3 Strike. These are great together. So, with regards to the traps, there's a lot of versatility with the traps, because these are your main 2 Shaddoll cards. So, Squamata gets you them, El Shaddoll Construct gets you them. So these are like really easy to get access to.
Yeah.
Shaddoll Schism is like unbelievable. It is one of the best trap cards that I've since I've come back to play the game. It's one of the best trap cards I've seen. And then Shaddoll Incarnation just allows you to grind an awful lot. And then if you are pushing for game, you can do the Incarnation combos. Schism is just, as I said, it's an unbelievable card. Being able to fuse on your opponent's turn, and then fuse from graveyard, and then also send a card of the same attribute that you special summoned, it's a great form of disruption. It's 2 disruptions, really, because it's just a better version of El Shaddoll Fusion, in my opinion. And again, as we said, that's why I quote El Shaddoll Fusion, because we're playing this card.
Yeah.
Dynamiscus it's a good trap. It triggers the Shaddoll cards as well, because the activation requirement is just to target a card, and then the effect is to discard and then banish a card. So it'll trigger the Shaddoll cards, and it can out some pretty key cards. It banished a couple of key things today. Sinister Shadow Games is a card that I think about cutting every now and then, but it's still a good card. It's a Foolish Burial trap card for any Shaddoll monster, which is really good. So it can turn a set Shaddoll card into, some sort of interaction, whether it's a destruction or a shuffle effect, or using it in the end phase to set a hedgehog to be able to flip that up to get access to a spell or trap on your next turn is really good.
Yeah.
But it actually also works amazing with Shaddoll Schism, Because realistically speaking, if you open these two, like you get your end board combo because you just set these two, you activate your Sinister Shadow Games, you dump a Squamata. Squamata will just dump whatever else, usually a Wendy, to set something to the field, and then you have your fodder for your window on your opponent's turn.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still a good card. I still like it, but it's one of the it's one of the cards that I would cut to test other stuff quicker than I would anything else.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I probably wouldn't cut it. Mm. Then moving on to these, so Torrential Tribute and Solemn Strike are really good, I think, at the moment. Torrential obviously triggers your Shaddoll cards as well. And going second, I would a lot of times still keep these cards in going second, because it's something I learned from one of the other guys in the team, Alvin. So quick shout out to Alvin. He likes Solemn Strike alongside like a destruction effect, because even if you're going second, you can just set the Torrential, set the strike, activate the Torrential, and then just strike whatever they're trying to negate the Torrential with. So it's also kind of like a board wipe on your opponent's turn.
Yeah, it locks out established boards from negating the Torrential.
Exactly. And like that's kind of the format from what I've seen is slow enough where you can, play these cards now.
Yeah.
So it's nice. Obviously tokens for when we need them for remote duels, and then I'll go into side deck in a bit, and then we drop our cards on the floor like an absolute idiot. So first of all, we're playing 5 link cards, 1 Gravity Controller, 1 Artemis, 1 Shaddoll Construct, Cross Sheep, and Boral Sword. Mm-hmm. The deck, I run a lot more fusions than some people would, because I just prefer the utility of them. These are the only link monsters that feel as if you specifically need in your deck.
Yeah.
And even at that, there's one of these that I would consider cutting as well, which is the Shaddoll Construct, but it's just a good card that it would come up. But Gravity Controller is part of the first turn end board. What you want to do is you want to get access away into Construct, and then you will put your Construct in your extra monster zone, link it off with the Gravity Controller. Your Construct will usually send the Shaddoll Schism, and then it just allows you to trigger Shaddoll Schism by just getting into 1 Construct, because you can send this from your extra monster zone for the Shaddoll Schism as well. Mm-hmm. Artemis is a card that if you want to play Shaddoll, you probably need to pick it up. It is cheap enough for people on a budget where I could say to people that you probably need to play it if you are playing Shaddoll, because it just means that any of your, as we were alluding to at the start, any of your hands where you open 2 dark Shaddoll monsters, you just have access, as long as you have the fusion, that is, you just have access to El Shaddoll Construct, and that's what you want. You literally just want to get Construct first turn. Speaking of Construct, the Shaddoll Construct, as I said, in 2 events, I haven't summoned it once, so it is a card that I think about cutting. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I know it is a good card that it could come up, so I don't want to cut it for events. I'll test without it, but for an event, I just want to have that there, because the extra deck is like loosey goosey enough where you can play it and you still have access to the rest of the stuff that you need. Yeah. Cross Sheep is insane in any fusion deck that can play it. It enables your Boral Sword OTK. When you would play Shaddoll Invoked, you would always want to go into Cross Sheep on your first turn. But when I'm playing Magistus and Magistus Shaddoll, I always never go into it on my first turn. I want to have access to it for when I'm pushing for game to be able to get into Boral Sword. And then Boral Sword is just your kill button, basically. Then fusions. We play 10 fusions. 1 Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, 1 Shaddoll Shekinaga, 2 App Clone, and then we play 3 Winda and 3 of the original El Shaddoll Construct. Daniel doesn't like this artwork, but it's special for me because the deck was bought for me as a present. So fusion cards. I'll start with Starving Venom. Starving Venom did not come up at all today. It's a card that I put in for today because I had anticipated some dark decks coming in today. Which, correct me if I'm wrong, it was PK Infernoble won the last event.
Yeah.
So I kind of thought that people might, clue into that deck is good. And then I was kind of like, I had space because I was playing 3 app clone, so I cut 1 app clone just to have access to the Starving Venom just in case I needed a first Super Poly.
Yeah.
And it's just probably the best Super Poly target that there is. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of your deck, as I said, is just Super Poly targets anyway, so
yeah.
The utility is there. Shekanaga. Shekanaga is a card that I would tell people to play if they're playing Shaddolls, just because there is a card in the format. It's not heavily played, but it's the Infinitrack Link monster.
Sure.
Zodiac player.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's unaffected by card effects that aren't monster card effects that aren't XEs. So this can kind of struggle against something like that. And then it's also an Earth
so you
target
just
for
poly it into Shekanaga, is that it?
Yeah, exactly. So you super poly the Infinitrack Link into the Shekanaga, but it's also good because it's good for dinosaurs. And then it came up today against Drytrons. It was one of the cards that I went into right. Because some of them are Earth type. You can just fuse into your Shekanaga, and it's good as well. The effect is pretty decent to be able to negate stuff, and then trigger your Shaddoll effects. App Clone I find really good. When I was playing Invoked Shaddoll, I was only playing 1 of it, so I'm glad that I can bump it up to 2. I was playing 3 at the last Remote Duel, but 3 is too much. It just kind of, you want 1 just in case you open a hand where you have to go into App Clone to do your combo, and then you want 1 for the utility. App Clone's probably my favorite Shaddoll card, because just how good it is. Being able to negate something, anything on the board, monster, trap, spell, is pretty good, but then being able to link it off, trigger its effect to get that key card from your deck as opposed to your graveyard, and then even at that you can add a Shaddoll Squamata and then dump the Shaddoll Squamata at the same time after the effect. It's very versatile, and that's, as I said, the key thing with this deck is the versatility. Winda is pretty good. It just has win in the name, as people say. There's not really much to say about that. It's good as well for having Winda there is good for Super Poly, as well as the Schism, because if you're going up against a Dragoon, you could Super Poly into this with the Dragoon.
Yeah.
Or else, if they let the Schism resolve, it'll send the Dragoon to the graveyard as well. So summoning this off the Schism is pretty good. Yeah. And then Construct is, it's what the deck revolves around. As I said, you want to get into Construct in your first turn. It's a very simplistic end board, but you need to get into Construct or App Clone to be able to get into your end board, because you need to get access to Schism. Other than that, other cards I kind of thought about was Omega, just to be able to, another light target in the extra deck that you can kind of, if you're playing punishments or anything like that, you can have that in your extra deck. Punishment, a pure trap version of this deck is how I'd go about playing the deck if you didn't want to play the Magistus stuff, if you couldn't afford it or anything like that. You just put in more trap cards. You take those 5 slots out, you put in 5 more trap cards. And then the extra deck, the extra deck is kind of strange and funny for today, because I'll leave the last 4 cards as the cards that I kind of cut for Gamma. But I played 1 Pankratops because it's just a really good going second card. 3 Lancia for Virtual World or anything that wants to banish dinosaurs or anything like that. 3 Nibiru just for any combo decks. These are also light targets for your Construct.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I had was good light hand traps. So that's why Gamma was originally in here as well. But we could have. Then we're playing Harpy's Feather Duster and 3 Cosmic Cyclone for any back row decks.
Yeah.
There's a nice little ratio that we have, that these 4 cards here and these 4 cards here alongside the Pancratops. There's 5 cuttable slots in the main deck that you can take out for when you go in second, and it's like it's the 3 you can take out the 3 Sinister Shadow Games, these actual 5 cards for when you go in second, and you can just slot these 5 cards in.
Okay.
So it's nice that there is like dedicated slots where in this deck where you can side these out, and you know the ratio of cards that you can side in.
Yeah.
And then the cards that we cut for the Gamma package is 1 Raigeki and 3 Dark Hole. As I said, it's been a while since I've played Yu-Gi-Oh! And from what I've seen, a lot of the combo decks now, they don't end on negate boards. They end on you don't play a card kind of board. Yeah. So you can kind of, to be honest with you, these didn't really come up today. I sided them in most of the time when I went second, and I've seen 1 Dark Hole in 5 rounds today.
Right. Did the Dark Hole resolve?
The Dark Hole did resolve, so I set a Squamata as well. So Dark Hole's good because it will trigger your Shaddoll effects as well. Yeah. And then, as I said, the reason Raigeki's in there as well, because you can side these 4 cards in alongside Pancratops, and you can destroy your monsters, and then if you're against the back row heavy deck, you can side these 5 cards in, and they're your back row disruptions. Yeah. And then these are just your hand traps that you just want to have the utility for.
So is there anything you would change in the side deck?
In the side deck, I probably would like to put the Gamma package back in.
Yeah.
I don't feel as if this performed good enough today.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't have access to them, play what you want. Like, it's about having fun. So the reason I played these today, like, I had access to Gammas, but I just wanted to play these just to have fun and just test them out. Yeah. And that's the important thing. But other than that, I probably might put the Gammas back in for the next event just to see, how impactful they are. But as I said, I used today as a learning experience for the deck and to kind of get better at it.
Did you have any standout matchups? Anything that kind of was particularly difficult or noteworthy?
Yeah, so the matchups today were like really good. There was a lot of like fun decks that I played against. So I played round 1 was against Dragon Maid, which was incredibly fun to play against because I didn't have a clue what those cards did. Round 2, I played against UAs, which I had never come across them before, like playing against them. I was aware of them, but never played against them. So I played a lot of decks for the first time today, which was incredibly fun. Round 3. What was round 3? I'm sorry to my round 3 opponent. I genuinely can't remember what it was. Oh no, it was Drytron, I think, was round 3. And it was kind of unfortunate for that round because the player I was playing against, like, really nice guy, and the camera just DC'd on him, and it just wouldn't come back in time. So we kind of had to, for the sake of the event, move on. So I would have liked to have seen how the rest of that duel would have played out. But that was, Drytrons are an incredibly powerful deck, and they are scary to come up against. Then round 4. What was round 4? Round 4 was a deck. I can't remember what round 4 was. I do apologize again. Round 4 was Grand Maju, which was interesting to say the least. Game 1, the first game, he gets a Grand Maju on field, and the attack is 10,400. And he attacked into an Apcolon, and I was left with 100 life points, and I was able to come back from that.
Oh wow!
It was quite funny. Like, that extra 100 life points, just like It was it was a good game. The guy was really nice as well. And then the last round, the final round, I was against the winner of the tournament, the Virtual World deck. And Virtual World is incredible. Like power wise, it's incredible.
Yeah.
That deck is scary. The fact that everything activates in hand and resolves in hand just makes a lot of the good hand traps that we used to play, like Imperm, Veilers and all that, just makes them redundant.
Yeah.
So, you kind of have to be able to play around that with stuff. And that's why I decided to play these today.
Yeah.
Because they kind of end on True King as well. And the way that this deck is set up, you can just wipe their board, set your traps, and then be able to play once their board is broke. Because they don't, as I said, they don't have negation boards. They just have you don't play boards.
Yeah, and they struggle under window, right?
They struggle under window, yeah. Like game 2, I just summoned a window. Sonam struck one of his cards and he just had to scoop it up because he just couldn't get over the window. Game 3, we went to a game 3 and variance happens in card games. I didn't open up well, but I also misplayed through a lack of concentration.
Right.
So, as I said, it's been a while since I played and I completely forgot that VFD not only negates the effect of the attribute, but it turns the card on the field into the same attribute, and I completely forgot about that. So variance and just concentration is what messed me up today.
Do you have any advice for people that would be considering playing Shaddoll for Remote Duel, either for locals or for the upcoming extravaganza?
Yeah, absolutely. So as we were alluding to, the key cards, like the deck in itself is quite cheap. A lot of the deck you can get in the structure deck.
Yeah. And
then the additional cards, the quote unquote expensive cards, would probably be these 6.
Yeah.
So, if you want to play Shaddolls, if you can find 3 structure decks, you're, 90% of the way there to be able to, play this version of the deck. 3 structure deck Shaddol is still pretty good. Providing, as we did allude to,
for the format.
Yeah, and you do, if you are going to play it, you do need access to Schism, so you do want to get a Schism if you want to play Shaddolls.
Yeah.
As I said, 2 is just, 2 is nice to have.
Yeah.
But it's
with
just
Squamata and Apocalypse, you have so much access.
You just have so much access to it. The only reason that you would want to play 2 Schism is, if it got Cosmic Cycloned or anything like that.
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I was thinking of Omega as well, to be able to bring it back.
Right.
But these 6, you could arguably cut these 6 from the deck. Put in 3 Dogmatic Punishment. Put in 3, bottomless trap holes or something. Some other trap. Or you can even bump up your El Shaddoll Fusion count. And you're pretty much good to go. Like, the deck is super good. It's super fun to play as well. I would suggest to people to play the deck because it's a fun deck. And that's what I kind of wanted to do when I was getting back into the game, was to be able to play a deck that was fun.
Yeah.
But it's not, Winda is a good card, but it's not an oppressive card, I always argue, because you can play around it. Whereas the likes of, VFD or, Zexel was another card that I seen.
Yeah.
That people were playing that are just, you just can't activate card effects, which I don't think is good for the game.
Mm-hmm.
But look, the cards are there. The cards are in the card pool. People, if the card is there and it's available for you to play, absolutely play it. There's absolutely no reason why you shouldn't play it.
Cool. Well, I'm going to let you go in a moment. Just finally, do you have any shoutouts you'd like to give out?
Yeah, shoutouts. I guess, shoutouts to the guys in TKB. We are, still there. Not really doing much at the moment, but not really much is going on. So we got to hold down the fort for the guys while being the only active player at the moment. I got to hold down the fort for the guys, and then probably give out to them to start getting involved in remote duels because they are good fun. Other than that, just thanks to you and thanks to Cahill for judging the event. Thanks to you for running the event. Thanks to everyone that turned up because as I said, it's nice to have an outlet again. It's nice to have something to look forward to. again with everything that's going on. And I guess I'll just end it by just saying everyone to look after themselves, and we'll see you guys at events.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, Jamie. Congratulations again on your top at locals, and I'm sure we will see more of you at Remote Duel coming soon.
Thanks, Dan.